everyone this week. We are celebrating the last Sunday of the Easter season. Did you know that? And then next week we are celebrating Pentecost. Do you know what that is? It is the birthday of the church. But this week we get to talk about all the things we talked about over the Easter season. So we talked about, well, we started off the story with Jesus and the disciples having the Last Supper, right? And they were a little sad, the disciples, because they knew their friend was about to die. That's what he told them. So they went out and prayed with him in the garden. I remember when they went out and prayed, they might have felt a little bit of peace and a little bit of calm. But then one of the disciples betrayed Jesus and told the guards where Jesus was and had him arrested. So they probably felt angry and mad and frustrated. And Jesus went to jail, and then he was put on trial, and they sentenced him to be hung on the cross. So how do you think the disciples felt there? You don't know? Were they happy that Jesus was going to be hung on the cross? No. Were they angry?
Scared.
Scared and angry. They were also scared because of how they felt. They thought maybe they would get arrested and persecuted too. And then Jesus was hung on the cross, and they would have felt sad because their friend had passed away and died. But then a few days later, the tomb was empty and Jesus wasn't there. So how do you think they felt when Jesus was not there?
Happy.
Happy? I think they'd be a little confused, a little worried. Yeah, I think they felt confused. And then what happened next? Who did they see? Do you remember?
Jesus.
That's right, they saw Jesus. All of a sudden he was back from the dead. How do you think they felt then?
Happy.
Happy they had their friend back and their friend was there to be with him. But then something else happened. Jesus ascended into heaven, which means he rose up to heaven. And he's no longer with them. So how did they feel now that Jesus was gone again? Sad?
Scared.
Scared, a little bit sad. Jesus was gone though. So the whole Easter season has talked about a lot of change, and there's been so much change that the disciples would have had to go through back when Jesus was living, and then he died, and then he came back again, and they would have felt a lot of different emotions. Probably something similar to us and how we have had a lot of changes this past year with the COVID-19 pandemic. We've had a lot of changes. Sometimes we've been in school, sometimes we've been out of school, sometimes we've been allowed to see friends, sometimes we haven't been allowed. We might have been allowed to go to dance or hockey or any of your extracurricular sports, and then you weren't allowed. So we've had a lot of changes, and they've given us all sorts of different emotions, whether it's sad, happy, confused, frustrated, just like what the disciples would have said. Or silly. Yeah, sometimes we've just been in silly moods with COVID. I agree. So we are actually going to read a story from the World Storybook Bible about Matthias. He is actually the 12th apostle, and we are going to read a little story about them. And this was another change that the disciples had to go through after Jesus ascended into heaven. The disciples choose. Peter counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He counted more. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. How many believers are at this meeting? Asked Peter. There were almost too many to count. About 120 believers crowded around Peter. We need 12 disciples to teach about Jesus, began Peter. Without Judas, there are only 11 of us. Help us pick one new disciple. The crowd wondered who it should be. We should pick someone who followed Jesus, Peter said. Someone who saw Jesus after he rose from the dead. Who should it be? A rumble went through the crowd. Someone yelled, "Pick Barsabbas." "Choose Matthias," called another. "We have two good choices," said Peter. "Barsabbas and Matthias are both followers of Jesus, but we can only pick one. Let's ask God to help us choose." All 120 believers and the 11 disciples prayed. "Dear God, you know Matthias inside and out. You know Barsabbas inside and out. Please show us who you choose to be our new disciple." After praying, the 11 disciples cast lots. All those watching held their breath. Who would be the next disciple? It's Matthias, Peter called. Let's welcome him. We now have 12 disciples who can be leaders and teach about Jesus. What did you think about that story?
It was funny.
It was funny? Yes, it was all about how the disciples did something to help them choose a new disciple. What did they do?
Pray to God.
That's right. They prayed to God to help them choose a new disciple. Jesus had left. He descended into heaven and they needed a new disciple. So they prayed to God to ask for guidance and help making the new choice and making the new change to their disciple group. Sometimes changes can be really, really hard to make. And one of the best things we can do is we can pray to God to ask for help and guidance as we make those changes. Is it hard to make changes, do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? What about you? Do you think it's hard to change? Has it been hard to go change schooling this year? A little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes we've had to change teachers or different things. But if we talk to God, He can help us through those changes. So, there's some ducks walking down our street. Are you quacking like a duck? There's my little duck. They're walking right down the middle. It's kind of funny. Okay, so we have a craft for you to do, or a little activity. So sometimes with a change, we start with one thing. So we start with a church, right? And that's the way it's always been. So for the disciples, they'd always had the same 12 disciples. They'd had Jesus and it was one way. But they knew they needed to make a change. They knew they needed to add a new disciple. And that was really hard because they weren't sure what to do. And sometimes when we're going through a change or doing something different, we don't really know what it's going to look like. So we're a little scared, we're a little nervous, and we're unsure with what to do. So in their case, they prayed. The Holy Spirit, right? The dove, the Holy Spirit, they prayed. And what I have always found, which is a really cool little trick, is if you have something from the past and something from the future and you pray to God for help and guidance, ultimately they're able to work together and may come together and make something new and make it a bit better. Do you see that? Now the dove's in the church. Can you do that? Woo! And now the dove's in the church. So instead of being afraid or sad that we're losing something from the past and afraid and nervous for the future, we have to know that both will come together to make something totally new and totally different. And it will be better. There you go. And there you have the dove in the church. So I actually have this printed out for you today. You can, all you need is some scissors, some glue, a pencil, probably a little bit of tape, and then the printout that I'm going to give you. And as you can see, I've given you the church and the dove. You're going to cut them out and you are going to glue them around that pencil. Okay, and you want to make sure the bottom dots kind of line up so that you know that they're even, right? So that the dove's not upside down. Okay, and you glue them around. Now, I also used a bit of tape to kind of hold it a little bit secure. Sometimes staples work really well too. And you can make your own, and when you spin it, it should put them together. Or, I've also given you a blank one so you can make your own. A common one is maybe a bird cage and a bird. But you get creative, you show me, and you do your own, and see what two things. And remember that change is not scary. It creates something new and something beautiful, right? Alrighty, should we say have a good week? Yes, and stay tuned. I will take a picture of those ducks for you and put them on the end. Have a great week, guys.
That means bye-bye.